I'll never forget that afternoon, not because of what I saw, but because of what it made me realize about the thin line between power and truth, and how quickly the air around you can change from calm to electric. It was one of those Texas Saturdays where the sun feels too bright, even behind sunglasses, the kind of day where the city hums at a lazy rhythm. Couples strolling with iced lattes, kids tugging at their parents' hands, people lingering outside cafes, because the breeze carries just enough warmth to make you slow down. It felt like nothing serious could possibly happen, like the world had agreed to give us all a little break. And then, in the span of a heartbeat, everything changed when a police cruiser rolled up and that easy rhythm snapped like a guitar string. The cruiser stopped sharp, lights flashing just enough to make everyone pause. And when the officer stepped out, you could feel the shift-heavy boots hitting pavement, his face carved into that look that says, "I own this moment, and you'd better not argue." His attention went straight to a man by a dark gray sedan, unlocking the door with the kind of calm you rarely see when a cop walks up on you. His name, though I only learned it later, was Julian Cross. He was mid-40s, tall, clean-cut in a navy suit that caught the sunlight just right, like the kind of guy who could be heading into a board meeting or a dinner party, but definitely not the kind of guy who looked like trouble. The officer called out, "Sir, hold up a second, I need to speak with you." And Julian turned, not defensive, not panicked, just puzzled with a polite smile that said, "Is there a problem?" And right then, people started to slow their steps, like moths pulled into the glow of something about to spark. Phones slid out of pockets almost by instinct because everyone knows when a cop zeroes in on somebody, you're about to witness a story, and maybe, if you're quick, catch it on video. The officer circled Julian's car, peering inside, tugging on the door handle, glancing back with that hard stare. Julian stayed still, calm, hands at his sides, his voice steady when he said, "Officer, I wasn't even driving. I just came out of the cafe." You could see how that calmness rubbed the cop the wrong way, like he was expecting nerves, excuses, maybe fear, but instead he got politeness, and that made his jaw clench. His voice rose, sharp now. "You fit the description. Step aside." And just like that, the people watching felt the shift too. A teenager whispered, "Here we go again." A woman shook her head, already recording. It wasn't just a stop, Anna Maria, it was a performance, one we'd all seen before in different forms. The officer told Julian to unlock the car. Julian let out this long breath, one of those sighs where you're weighing dignity against risk, then asked, "On what grounds, officer?" The question hung in the air, bold but controlled. The crowd leaned closer. Finally, Julian tapped the fob, the locks clicked, and the officer swung open the door with too much energy, digging through the back seat longer than anyone could justify. Then he came up holding a small plastic bag, the powder inside catching the sunlight like a cheap trick. Gasps erupted. Somebody shouted, "He planted that." Another voice, "We saw the whole thing." But the officer smirked, muttering "Gotcha" under his breath as if it was a private joke. Julian didn't flinch, didn't panic, didn't even blink. He looked at the officer, eyes steady, and said, "Are you finished?" That line cut the air like glass. The cop's smirk deepened, and he snapped the cuffs onto Julian's wrists with a clang that made everyone on the sidewalk shout at once. Phones angled higher, voices collided. "Let him go. We've got you on video." But Julian, cuffed, calm, his voice even lower now, said, "You just committed a felony on camera." It was like he'd thrown a rock into water, and the ripples spread instantly through the crowd. The chant began almost by itself. Evidence doesn't lie. People do. Over and over, the words bouncing off buildings, growing louder, shaking the moment. The officer tried to drag Julian toward the cruiser, but Julian lifted his chin, his voice carrying, "My name is Julian Cross, and officer, this is your last chance to step back." The cop barked out a laugh, shaking his head like, "Yeah, right. You think a name means anything to me." But people in the crowd looked at each other. Why was this man so calm? Why did he sound so certain? That's when backup rolled in, tires squealing, sirens scattering the tension for just a breath. Two more officers climbed out, one older with that weary authority, the other younger, his nerves written across his face. The older one asked what was going on. The first officer lifted the bag like a trophy. "Caught this man with possession, resisted arrest." The crowd exploded. "He planted it. Check the videos. We saw everything." Phones surged forward, a wall of lenses. The older cop turned to Julian, eyes narrowing. "Sir, can you state your name?" And Julian, cuffed but towering with composure, said, "Julian Cross, Director of the Federal Investigations Bureau. Verify it before you embarrass yourselves further." Silence. Thick, breathtaking silence. The younger cop fumbled for his radio, his voice cracking as he called it in. "Dispatch, confirm ID. Julian Cross. Claims to be the director." A burst of static, then the voice from dispatch. "Confirmed. Repeat, confirmed. Julian Cross is director." And the whole street broke open. Gasps, cheers, curses, disbelief, strangers looking at each other with wide eyes, like they'd just watched a mask get ripped off in real time. The first officer's face drained of color. The cuffs came off fast, metal clattering to the pavement. Julian rubbed his wrists slowly, not triumphant, not angry, just steady. He turned to the cop who'd planted the bag. His words were quiet, but cut like a knife. "You thought intimidation was power, but power without truth is nothing." The crowd roared, chants turning into a tidal wave. "Lock him up! Lock him up!" The crooked cop shrank into himself, sweat dripping down his temple, his swagger gone. The senior officer's voice cut cold. "Hand over the evidence bag. You're suspended, effective immediately." Phones captured every second, zooming in on his pale face, his trembling hand as he surrendered the bag. Julian didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He turned to the crowd, his voice calm, conversational, like he was sitting across a kitchen table instead of standing in the middle of a storm. He said abuse of power only thrives when good people stay silent, that every phone raised, every voice that spoke, was what kept the truth alive. He told the honest cops not to let the bad ones drown them out, because when trust is gone, a badge means nothing. And the way he said "it you" could feel it sinking into people, not as some lofty speech, but as lived truth. He looked back at the crowd one more time, his voice softer now. "I didn't need to be director for this to be wrong. Any man, any woman, deserves dignity. And no Onino badge, no title has the right to strip that away." For a moment, the street was silent. Then it cracked wide open with cheers, whistles, even tears. People shouted his words back at him like they'd already become gospel. The crooked cop was escorted into the backup cruiser, his head bowed, his career bleeding out under the blaze of 100 cameras. And Julian walked away not with fanfare, not with protection, just with the kind of presence that made space part around him like water. And here's the thing, the debate didn't end on that street. It never does. By nightfall, those videos were everywhere, and people were arguing, some saying justice had been served, others saying the system was rotten to the core, others still twisting themselves into knots to defend the indefensible. That's the world we live in. Truth doesn't just win by showing up. It wins when people protect it, when they choose not to look away. So I'll leave you with this: if you'd been standing on that sidewalk, watching it unfold in real time, would you have raised your voice? Would you have filmed? Would you have stepped closer? Or would you have kept walking? Do you think truth really stands a chance when power digs in its heels? Tell me what you think down in the comments, because these aren't just questions about Julian or about one cop on one street. They're about all of us, and whether we let silence win or we let the truth breathe.